Welcome to Earthwork Echoes. Today we're following timber the slow, honest way, where every mark matters and every cut leaves a signature. Settle in, listen close, watch how a raw trunk becomes something straight enough to hold a lifetime. By the end, this stubborn oak will sit as clean, squared timber, ready for a roof frame, a floor, maybe even a wheel axle. But there's a problem hiding in plain sight. A log doesn't want to be square, and one bad decision early can lock a mistake in forever. So today, we watch the grain. We watch the tools, and we watch the rhythm, because wood forgives almost nothing. The first thing you feel is the place. Open fields tighten into slopes. The valley narrows, and suddenly you're in that pocket of land where water keeps moving, even when everything else feels still. Old villages like this weren't designed. They were negotiated with the ground. Stone underfoot, timber above it, a stream that never stops working. You can see it in the buildings. Pale infill between dark beams. Straight lines held together by joinery, not luck. And it's the beams that matter. Because long before engines or forklifts, a house was only as true as the timber a carpenter could pull from the forest nearby. Now the sound changes. Birds and wind fade out. Metal, water, and a low mechanical breathing take over. This sawmill is the hinge between forest and building site. Even as everything else modernized, this stayed the heart, the place where round trees become usable shapes. Watch how the log arrives. It isn't carried in like a finished product. It's dragged, rolled, bullied into position. Every movement reminds you how heavy a living tree becomes once it's down. The trolley takes the weight like it's done this forever. Steel wheels, rails, a quiet clack as the log settles. For the first time, the trunk cooperates. Here comes the decision that shapes the entire day. How the log is placed, how the curve is presented, decides what stays as strong heartwood and what gets sacrificed to the edges. The carriage lines up with the frame saw. This isn't a screaming blade. It's a grid of teeth moving with steady certainty. Like a metronome, you can feel through the floor. The feed rollers don't rush. They pull the log forward at a pace the saw can accept. Too much pressure and the blade wanders. Too little and it chatters, tears and stalls. Listen for the clean bite. When everything's right, the tone never changes. The log disappears into the saw. A moment later, the first face appears. Fresh, pale, wet-looking. Sap and tannin spill into the air. That first flat isn't pretty. It's important. Because from here on, you're not guessing. You're building accuracy from one true surface. Boards peel away at the edges. The thick center stays for beams. Strength is kept where strength matters. The rest becomes planks. The offcuts don't look like waste, but they are. Wood that did its job in the tree, but won't do it in a frame. Finished pieces slide out fast and get sorted faster.
Stellten die Holzliste zusammen und sorgten für den Zuschnitt der Schwellen, Rähmen, Pfosten, Streben, Balken, Sparren und Dielen. Wenn die Bauherren das benötigte Eichenholz aus dem eigenen Wald stellten, wie es früher häufig vorkam, wurden die Schneidearbeiten für Lohn ausgeführt. Die Dielen eines Eichenstammes, der schon vorher zerschnitten war, werden hier neben dem Sägebock weggeräumt. Man legt sie sorgfältig zusammen, wie sie ursprünglich gesessen haben. Zwischengelegte Lättchen sorgen dafür, dass die Luft durchstreichen kann. Wer es sich leisten konnte, ließ das geschnittene Holz auf diese Weise 2 bis 3 Jahre lang lagern und trocknen. Durch lange Lagerung steigerten sich Haltbarkeit und Qualität.
Some stack to dry. Some wait for another pass. Some rest because drying matters more than people think. A beam that looks perfect today can become a slow-moving problem tomorrow if moisture leaves unevenly. Those stacks are spaced, lifted, left to breathe. And just when it feels like the machine solved everything, the story flips. Because not every log fits a mill, and not every job should be fast. Sometimes the timber is too long, too awkward, or the access is too tight. And sometimes the point isn't efficiency at all. It's keeping the method alive. So we leave the mill and step back into older work. Out in the clearing, the day feels different. Colder air, softer ground, tools laid out like an alphabet you have to read correctly. The log cart comes first. Simple until you notice the geometry. How the axle balances, how the chain bites, how weight hangs so a horse can pull without fighting full drag. This is where mistakes turn dangerous. A slipped bind, a swinging load.
Ja. Hast du det? Was heißt?
Nein, ich gebe etwas rumziehen, So, jetzt. Ja, so ist gut.
So, nu de keiler raus.
Jetzt kommen die Keiler raus.
Moment, ist noch nicht weg. So, ja. Ja. So, Kette zusammen. Kette, enge.
Ah, das ist schon. Oh.
Moment. So, haben wir einen zweiten Keiler, setzen wir einen zweiten Keiler hinter. Nee.
Noch mehr. Noch ein Schlag.
Immer rein, immer noch. Immer noch. Immer noch. Immer noch.
Gut,
So.
fertig.
Erst wenn der Stamm am offenen Kopf, wo man die Schnittkeilchen entfernt, mit der Kette gebunden und stramm gezogen ist,
A wheel in a rut. Timber doesn't fall politely. Downhill, friction becomes the brake. Quiet but tense. At the cutting area, everything slows again. Logs lie on different levels, positioned so work moves downhill. Without fighting gravity sideways. This isn't tradition. It's physics. Moving mass precisely. Without machines. Cant hooks roll the log. Curved claws turning round wood into something steerable. Every pull is leverage. Every step planned. Once seated on supports, the log can't rock. Because if it rocks, every measurement after this becomes a lie. Now comes the real decision. They aren't carving a beam from a perfect cylinder. They're finding a straight line. Inside an imperfect body. The straight edge judges. Not decoration, truth. Chalk hits bark. And the tree crosses a line. It stops being a tree. And becomes geometry. They read the heart, not the skin. The axe starts the conversation. Big cuts at the ends. Vertical notches in the middle. Interrupting fibers so waste breaks clean. The surface changes. Facets appear. A trunk becomes a blank. Then the sound shifts again. The adze takes over. Short handle, wide blade, controlled bite. Thin curls shave high spots away. The face catches light evenly. Not because it's romantic, but because it's true. They check constantly. Listen constantly. Too deep leaves hollows. Too shallow polishes lies. Once two faces agree, everything accelerates. They snap a blackened line from end to end. One sharp pop, a straight truth, across a piece of wood that has never been straight in its life. Gravity transfers the line below. Because gravity doesn't argue, the log turns again. Heavy, stubborn, but the movement is choreography now. Levers, wedges, timing. The timber settles with a confident thud. From here, it's repetition with purpose. Saw along the line. Keep the curve clean. Let the teeth work. Hands numb. Steel cold. A hot meal arrives once a day. Because you can't swing accurately on an empty stomach. And then the resistance fades. The wood cooperates, not because it gave up, but because it's finally understood. The final passes clean small ridges. Edges sharpen. Faces agree. The beam sits steady. True square. Ready to dry. Ready to stack. Ready to disappear into a building where nobody will notice the work that made it possible. That's the strange beauty of timber craft. When it's done perfectly, the effort becomes invisible. Thanks for spending this time with Earthwork Echoes. If you enjoy slow craft, old methods, and quiet precision, like and subscribe. We'll be back soon with another material, another fight, and another shape hiding inside raw matter.